Last night, for the first time in weeks, the guns went quiet in Lebanon. A 10-day ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah took effect at 5 p.m. Eastern yesterday. Tracer rounds and fireworks lit up the Beirut sky, not from strikes, but from celebration. And within hours of that announcement, Donald Trump told reporters something that nobody expected to hear. I would go to Pakistan. Yeah, Pakistan has been great. If the deal is signed in Islamabad, I might go. The President of the United States just said he would personally fly to Islamabad to sign a peace deal with Iran. He also said Iran has agreed to hand over the enriched uranium, the nuclear dust buried underground after the B-2 bomber strikes. He said second-round talks are coming probably, maybe, over the weekend, and the S&P 500 closed at a record high. This is April 17, 2026, day 49, 4 days before the ceasefire expires, and something has fundamentally shifted.
Let us go through it piece by piece, carefully because the devil is always in the details. Start with Lebanon, because it is the thread that unlocks everything else. Iran's stated precondition for returning to talks was always that Israel must cease its operations against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Washington and Israel insisted Lebanon was never part of the U.S.-Iran ceasefire. That dispute has been the structural obstacle blocking a second round for 8 straight days. If Iran won't talk without a Lebanon ceasefire, and the U.S. won't concede Lebanon is part of the deal, you get a diplomatic deadlock with a clock ticking. Yesterday, that deadlock broke. Trump announced a 10-day ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, following conversations with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and Lebanese President Joseph Aoun.
The U.S. State Department confirmed the agreement commits both sides to good-faith direct negotiations with the objective of achieving a comprehensive agreement that ensures lasting security, stability, and peace. Trump invited both leaders to the White House. Former NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg called it good news and a potential first step toward lasting peace. Now, the important caveats before anyone declares victory in Lebanon. Israel agreed to a ceasefire, but vowed to keep its troops in southern Lebanon. Israel's UN ambassador Danny Danon said clearly, "We are not going anywhere. We are holding our positions. If we feel threatened, we will react." Hezbollah's leadership called the ceasefire a product of their own military resistance, not a concession. Iran's parliament speaker Ghalibaf said Iran would approach it cautiously, and Lebanese army officials warned civilians not to return to southern villages yet. There is also a darker historical context here. In 2024, Israel agreed to a Lebanon ceasefire, and UN peacekeepers subsequently recorded more than 10,000 violations, mostly by Israeli forces. The Lebanese people know that a ceasefire announcement and a ceasefire reality are two different things. But for the purposes of the Iran diplomacy, the specific question of whether the Lebanon obstacle has been removed enough to allow second-round talks to proceed, the answer appears to be yes. Iran got what it publicly demanded. A ceasefire in Lebanon is now in place, however fragile. The diplomatic path to Islamabad Round 2 is no longer blocked by Beirut. Now, the nuclear dust claim, because Trump said something yesterday that, if accurate, would represent the single biggest concession Iran has made since the war began.
They've agreed to give us back the nuclear dust that's way underground because of the attack that we made with the B-2 bombers,
Trump told reporters.
So we have a lot of agreement with Iran.
This is an extraordinary statement. The enriched uranium stockpile, approximately 460 kilograms of 60% enriched material, enough for roughly 11 nuclear bombs, according to U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff, has been one of the most contentious points of the entire negotiation. Washington has demanded it be removed from Iranian territory. Tehran has insisted it is sovereign Iranian property and part of its civilian nuclear program. The idea that Iran has agreed to hand it over would represent a fundamental shift in its negotiating position. Several important qualifications apply here. Iran has not publicly confirmed this. The Washington Post reported Trump's claim, but noted it has not been independently verified by Iranian sources. Throughout this conflict,
Trump has repeatedly claimed agreements that Iranian officials subsequently denied. He said Iran asked for a ceasefire when Iran denied it. He said Iran agreed to open Hormuz when they hadn't.
He said the Islamabad meeting went well when his own negotiators acknowledged it had failed. That pattern of presidential overclaiming is important context, but it is equally important to note Munir's delegation was in Tehran Thursday, meeting with Ghalibaf and Arachi. The conversations are real. The messages are being exchanged. Al Jazeera's sources inside the mediation said Pakistani mediators are optimistic about a major breakthrough on the nuclear front. Whether that breakthrough has already been agreed in back channels and Trump simply disclosed it, or whether Trump is getting ahead of an incomplete negotiation, is the question that matters most right now and cannot be answered with certainty from the outside. What is certain is this: Trump is publicly describing the shape of a deal. Uranium out of Iran, nuclear weapons off the table, Hormuz reopened. Both sides talking again this weekend. The public narrative has shifted from no deal possible to deal very close. That shift itself creates momentum, because markets, allies, and domestic political audiences all start pricing in the outcome that is being described. The markets today tell their own story about what the world is betting on. The S&P 500 closed at 7,023 on Wednesday, a new all-time record, erasing every loss since the war began February 28th. The Nasdaq jumped 1.6%, its 11th consecutive day of gains. Oil prices fell below $100 a barrel for the first time since the blockade began. Trump predicted, "When the war is over, the stock market is going to boom. It's already booming." That market move is not irrational. The economic logic is clear. If the war ends, Hormuz reopens, and the global energy supply shock resolves, even partially and gradually, the inflationary pressure that has been building since late February begins to unwind. The IEA, the IMF, and the World Bank all warned that fuel and fertilizer prices would stay elevated even after Hormuz reopened. But elevated from a lower baseline is still better than elevated from the current baseline. Every percentage point that oil drops translates directly into relief at American gas pumps, and every gas pump that reads below $4 is a political gift to an administration facing midterm elections in 7 months. Trump knows this. The stock market is going to boom is not just a prediction, it is a political framing. The war that damaged markets and inflated gas prices will end with markets at record highs and Trump taking credit for both the military victory and the peace. That is the narrative his team is constructing in real time, and the market is cooperating. But here is what is still unresolved, and it is substantial. The ceasefire expires in 4 days, on April 21st. No date has been officially set for a second round of Islamabad talks. Pakistan's foreign ministry said explicitly that no date has been confirmed, and that a Lebanon ceasefire is essential, a condition now technically met, but fragile. Iran's parliament spokesman said Iran will not extend the ceasefire unless it includes Iranian control of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's army spokesperson said a ceasefire does not make much difference to their military readiness. And the Hormuz blockade continues. The U.S. Navy is still turning ships away from Iranian ports. The 20 versus 5-year moratorium gap on uranium enrichment has not been publicly resolved. The Hormuz control question, who governs transit through the strait after any deal, has not been resolved. War reparations, frozen assets, and sanctions relief have not been resolved. And Hezbollah's disarmament, which Israel has made a condition of its Lebanon engagement, is a generational political problem with no quick answer. What has changed since last weekend is not the substance of the gap. It is the environment around the gap. Lebanon has a ceasefire. Iran's diplomatic precondition is technically satisfied. Trump is describing the shape of a deal publicly. Markets are pricing in success. Munir has been in Tehran. The White House feels good. The S&P is at a record high. Environment matters in diplomacy. When all the pressure is pointing toward a deal, economic pressure, market pressure, political pressure, ceasefire deadline pressure,
Negotiators on both sides have more room to make the last-minute concessions that break a logjam. The question going into this weekend is whether the environment that has been constructed over the past 4 days is sufficient to close the remaining distance on the numbers that actually matter. One more thing worth noting before we close, and it is about Trump's offer to travel to Pakistan. No sitting American president has visited Pakistan since George W. Bush in 2006.
The offer, even as a conditional, "if the deal is signed, I might go," is a significant signal to Islamabad. Pakistan has invested enormous national prestige and diplomatic capital in this mediation. A presidential visit would be the ultimate validation of that investment. It would elevate Pakistan's standing in the region in ways that outlast this crisis. And for Field Marshal Munir, who has been the operational architect of this diplomacy, it would be a historic personal achievement. That offer is not accidental. It is an incentive directed at Pakistan to push harder. It is Trump telling Munir, "Get Iran to say yes this weekend, and I'll come to your city to sign it." That is a remarkable piece of leverage that Washington is deploying through public statement rather than private channel. The board has never been closer to resolution. 4 days, a Lebanon ceasefire, a nuclear dust agreement reportedly in place, a president willing to fly, a market betting on peace.
Watch this weekend very carefully.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps more people find the board.